Hey, this is Chris Gethard, and you're listening to Is That Your Kid? You better buckle up, man, because Todd and Jake, they're about to take you on a real ride.
Welcome back, everybody, to episode 4 of Is That Your Kid podcast with me, Todd Tondera, and my kissable, lovable, huggable, wannable co-host, Jake the Angel Boy Zerme.
All right, good to be here. I'm excited. I got 4 whole adjectives to describe me.
Yeah?
Those are adjectives, yeah?
Yeah, I believe so.
Well, should we do it over?
Keep it. Okay.
Well,
let's hope they're adjectives and go forward.
Well...
Okay, what's an adjective?
Something to describe something.
What did we just...
But it could be like a different type of adjective. It's like a... I don't know.
I think that was good. I think we should keep it.
We're here with Todd, the podcast Tondera.
Todd, the podcast. That would be my, my solo debut, I think. It would just be...
Your solo podcast would be the podcast.
The podcast. What? We should make up some kind of segment in the next week or so that we name it the podcast. I wonder what that would segment. Maybe like a wrestling update. A weekly wrestling update. Well, not weekly, but like a segment. The podcast would be the wrestling update. So not all the time.
Just keep it under, 10 seconds, though, for me.
Yeah. So about
that's been a podcast from...
That's been the weekly... Spoiler alert, John Cena wins.
You can't see him. He's the only invisible WWF player. That's why he always wins.
Player.
He's a player.
The WWF player. It's WWE. Speaking of wrestling, I got the WWE Network, and I was watching the WCW pay-per-views from 1995.
You're at 5 seconds already. Keep wrapping up.
I enjoyed them.
And that has been the first segment.
And that's the segment.
Podcast.
But busy week over here at ITYK Studios. Oh no!
Is that your studios?
ITYK Studios. I'm still watching that.
There's gonna be a lot of Is That Your Goose
next week. But yeah, so Todd and Jake here back week 4. We had a busy week.
Weekend.
Or
was it Thursday?
Yeah, that whole
That's
week.
Really not. Yeah, it's a week. Okay.
I think it was on Tuesday or Wednesday, a comedian friend of mine by the name of Chris Gethard, he's a New York comedian, he announced a show that he's opening up for Mike Birbiglia in Pittsburgh, and he had, what's it called, quoted me on Facebook? What's it when you put their name and it's a link?
It's like tag
me in a post on... Yeah, tag me in a post on Facebook about going, and I don't believe that he's been to Pittsburgh before, so it was his first Pittsburgh outing. You may know Chris Gethard from, currently he's on TV on Broad City. He plays a boss by the name of Todd on Broad City, and he also hosts the Chris Gethard Show on MNN Public Access in Manhattan. Mentioned him before. And he actually had a pilot. His show had a pilot for Comedy Central, so we're still kind of in between to see if that gets picked up at Comedy Central. And he also did a show called Big Lake, which was in, I guess about, 2004 or 5, something like that?
Yeah.
6, 2000. Sorry, Chris, if you're listening and I don't know. But anyway, and so I had asked Drake to come with me, and so... he was down. It was actually Jake's first stand-up show.
Yeah, just so we know, Chris was gonna be doing a stand-up along with Mike Birbiglia, and it was actually my first stand-up, which was cool.
And it was a lot of firsts. It was first for that, and I think it was the first time Chris performed in Pittsburgh.
I think so.
At least first time around the city. But
he performed in one of the biggest theaters that there is in Pittsburgh, biggest venues. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the Byham Theater. And so we picked him up at the Greyhound. We didn't pick him up really. We met him at the Greyhound. We walked up to Permane Brothers Sandwich Shop in the Strip District there.
The original Permane's
the original Primanti's because he wanted to know about the Pittsburgh Sandwich Shop, and I was like, well, we'll take you.
One. Right.
So we walked up there. We had, I guess, like an early dinner, or is that a traditional dinner?
It's about a dinner time.
What is dinner time
for me?
Yeah.
5:30. 6.
Well, that was probably traditional dinner time. And so he had a sandwich. So if you check that out, isthatyourkid.tumblr.com, you see a picture of Chris eating his first Primanti sandwich. We posted it on our Twitter as well, at isthatyourkid. So if you want to follow us there, you could check out the photo of Chris eating the Primanti sandwich.
By the way, he is a sandwich connoisseur.
Yeah.
As seen on his show,
yes,
The Chris Gethard Show. They host a annual sandwich night where on the show they bring anyone, guests, audience members. They bring as much sandwich supplies as you can muster, not mustard, and you just
maybe
bring it.
Mustard.
You
though.
could, and you just bring it. and They just eat a whole bunch of sandwiches on the show. So being a sandwich connoisseur, he loved the Primanti's Pittsburgher, which is the steak. But is it, what do they call it? This steak.
The number 2 famous sandwich. Yeah, the cheesesteak.
Cheesesteak.
The cheesesteak, and also I noticed him looking for, because he's a soda connoisseur as well, and he was looking for different sodas, but I was just like, nah, bro.
We let him down on that respect.
I was like, no, bro, shit soda here. So he just got a Dr. Pep.
We all didn't get tomatoes.
No, he didn't. He did like the slaw though, because it wasn't. What did he say? Like wet. He said it wasn't wet slaw.
Yeah. So that was a cool first. He actually mentioned that right out of the gate in his stand-up.
Oh yeah, he did.
Pittsburgh people really like that.
Yeah.
You hear Primanti's.
And so then we walked back. Speaking of wrestling, he and I talked about wrestling a little bit. Tonka Michinoku, his ECW run with that Michinoku driver, and and then then we went back. And the intro, which you heard, we actually record he was in the back seat of my rental car, because, long story short, my car was hit and run, so I had a rental car, and it was the nicest car I'll never own, and it was from Massachusetts, so I will always remember that day, is like, no matter what we did for the rest, I will always remember
the time you picked up Chris Gethard not in your car.
Or not in my car, and him recording an intro from the Greyhound station parking lot in the back seat of the car. And I was like, that's the moment I'll remember, sitting in the driver's seat in a rental car in the Greyhound parking lot with him doing that. And then, we went to see Mike Birbiglia and him perform and had a great time. Mike Birbiglia actually favorited a few of our tweets from that night. So that was cool.
Yeah,
that he gave us a little bump there. And so I don't want to ruin any of their bits if they use them, but
I just like to say that was great. That was hilarious.
Yeah.
I laughed a lot, which is what you do when you go to a stand-up.
And
but
so
enjoy it.
Birbigs had the Muppet stuff. The Muppet stuff that he did was so just just top shelf quality.
Did he mention how long ago that was? Was it just last year?
I don't know.
Because that was great.
But if you get a chance to see them, they're on tour. Mike Birbiglia and Chris Gethard, and we had a hell of a time. So if they come to your town, please hit them up. But with that said, too, a friend that I know through Chris, Andrew Hot Dog Parrish, who I mentioned on the first episode, getting him in here to speak with him. We did the next best step. We contacted by the phone because we still didn't figure out Skype calls, and we really jerry-rigged everything properly here. And so Andrew Hot Dog Parrish always sort of reminded me of Jake, and he's somebody on the show as well. And to just kind of talk to his shop about like what he does for a living, what he does on the side, what his interests are. And so we
well, we'll hear about it.
Yeah, we'll hear about that. And but it was great being our first guest, and I think there's a chance later on in the future that he will be back on the pod in some capacity, or podcast, because when I said pod, somebody had actually emailed us.
Mad, but that's okay. We'll call it a podcast.
Somebody had actually emailed in and said I said pod, and they said it was out of laziness. And I'll say this to them. I don't really care about you, so.
Wow. All right. Well, I'll still call it a podcast.
Yeah.
So after a brief introduction with Andrew Parrish, we actually got to dig in with him about a few things. So you want to just roll it?
Yeah, roll it.
All right, cool.
You actually are the first guest, phone-in guest on Is That Your Kid podcast that we've ever have. And
really, what do you usually do? How does it usually work?
we usually just sit, and this is the truth. We usually just sit in Jake's bedroom with two snowball microphones on a pop-up table, and we talk to each other.
It's a 6-foot pop-up table, though. It folds right in half.
That sounds pretty nice. I don't know. I think everyone could probably use one of those.
Yeah, we can and we will.
Because it's 6 foot. Guess what? When I fold it in half, it's only 3.
So it could be a 3-footer or a 6-footer, depending what you need on a table. But so we actually, you can't see the setup here, but we actually we couldn't get Skype calls running. So what we have is the phone plugged into speakers, and so you don't get too much echo on your end. We have Hershey's pot of gold chocolate boxes blocking the speakers.
Oh wow! Okay, great. It sounds fine to me. So
great.
All right, well, that's awesome. Well, glad to have you on the show.
Yeah, and
my pleasure. Hey, sure.
So we are speaking to Andrew Hot Dog Parrish. Now I met Andrew. I think it was last summer. Or May, June, and when I went up to the Chris Gethard Show in New York City, and one of the first people to introduce themselves is you, Andrew, and you were always super nice. You're cool, glad you're here, glad you're doing something, and I was yeah, definitely, and you just seem like the nicest dude ever, and with that said, you remind me a lot of Jake, how you carry yourself, kind of the same humor as well. And so that's why when I pitched the podcast idea to Jake, I was it would mean a lot to me to have you and Jake on the same podcast. So that is one of my dreams already completed. So you're here.
It's already happening.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jake, have you ever come up to New York?
No, I've been to New York, but I've not been to, the M&M studios. Not yet.
I'm making the assumption that you had been to New York, and I guess I was right that you had. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how often you guys can get away, but it'd be great to have. If you would like to come up too, you should. But I can't control your schedules. But anyway.
You certainly can't. But you know what? That sounds like an awesome offer. We'll consider that. I'm actually a music teacher, elementary music teacher, all the way up to 8th grade. And I understand just from the show and just things that I've seen you be a part of that you also work with kids.
I do work with kids. I'm a tutor and I guess a teacher, but yeah, that's primarily how I make a living.
Well, that's cool. You already seem like you have a more important job than I do. We just sing songs and play some instruments in my class. So that's pretty cool. A tutor. That's interesting. What age group? I think
establishing a love of music and children is not a bad thing at all to be doing. I think it's good to have an appreciation of that for young kids. So.
Well, that's cool. So, what age group do you work with? Just any age,
It's everyone from, I would say, middle school up through later high school, like that.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
It's subject work. It's some test prep, like SAT stuff, and just certain tests that are only in New York to get into high school, and it's just stuff like that. It's not the most exciting stuff in the world, but it's
definitely important. Though you're helping them get by. It's good. Where they otherwise might not be able to.
Otherwise they would just not get by. I don't know what they would be doing.
So you do one-on-one? Do you do one-on-one? Or are there a couple that are in there with you at a time, or? Yeah.
I do one-on-one. I also do classes. In different places. I work at a couple schools. I work, sometimes I'll drive out to Long Island, and then sometimes there are people who just go to their apartments one-on-one in Manhattan or Brooklyn. And so, yeah, it depends on the day, really. It all varies. I say this is not a particularly funny interchange so far. I hope that this is.
Oh no, this is perfect. This is perfect. We wanted to get to the meat and potatoes. And that's the meat and potatoes with that.
Well, actually, I just on the last podcast last week, episode 3, I actually talked about how a kindergarten student of mine, he's 6. right in class, as we were having class, he actually just ripped a tooth right out of his head. His very first tooth ever. He just pulled it straight out.
He didn't rip it out of his mouth. He ripped it out of his head. Is what?
He was in his like ear or something. It's interesting. It does take a certain amount of nerve to pull a tooth out. I'm gonna get yelled at just like I did in that one ukulele army. But I remember my dad would always help me knock out my baby teeth with. Do you guys know those golden books?
with the fancy engravings in the bindings? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a very small, like maybe a centimeter or two, or centimeter wide, gold binding. He would take one and like, I mean, this is with my consent, of course, and like sort of put it up to my teeth and just sort of pop like the binding, and that did a great job.
So when you say your dad helped you knock out your teeth, he was physically knocking them out.
Yeah, well, if it was loose, then he would say, do you want to get it out? And I would say, yeah, sure. And then that was a great way of doing it. So, I don't know.
How many teeth did you lose that way?
Not a lot, probably like 4 or 5. I don't know. Just, it's of your many baby teeth you lose. Others I probably just wiggled out on my own.
Yeah,
anyway.
I'll tell you this. My bottom row gave me a ton of trouble. They were stuck in there. I had to like physically get them going because I was getting too old to have bottom teeth, like baby teeth. So I had to. Yeah, I feel that.
But something else I wanted to talk to you about. Your passions as a person, like what kind of to. I guess a hard segue that was, but your passions as a person, like what kind of, whether it be comedy, whether it be personal influences, what kind of gives you that hot dog pizzazz?
What gives me the pizzazz, like in terms of what?
Like
just in terms of like how I am on the show, or how I like
on the show as a person, and just like influences. What kind of what kind of comedy are you into?
Well, that's the thing, is that I would say that unlike the lion's share of a lot of the people there, I don't do improv at all, and I got involved with the show or really stand up. I did stand up one time at another. Actually, I have this is not a circuitous thing I'm about to say. The new like Problem Solver video is coming out on Thursday.
Oh yeah, number 2.
The girl who was in that, Brooke, I did stand up one time at a variety like hour that she ran for 2 years, where I told like 20 knock jokes in a row. But I've never really done stand up.
That's awesome.
I don't do improv really. I did a jam one time, but I don't know. I got involved because of JD, the director. We went to school together, and he said, "Oh, you should get, you know this already. This is old news, or maybe I don't know." But so I don't know I don't follow comedy. I guess this is my way of saying I'm not super. I'm bad at following comedy or who's up with keeping up with things.
Well, that's interesting because I've never even been to a stand-up show, with the exception of I guess this past weekend.
Yeah, the reason why I bring that up is because we went to see Jake and I went to see Mike Birbiglia and Chris Gethard, in Pittsburgh, and that was his first comedy show, I guess you could say. Now it was like in a bigger theater, but it was like his first experience seeing that live. So so he's kind of new to that idea too, because he's a super funny dude just naturally, and I find you a super funny dude just naturally too. It doesn't mean it comes from a certain background. It's just like you guys are just funny.
Are you saying that we're funny by accident?
Almost by accident, accidentally on purpose. Funny.
I would say thinking about things that I really have liked over time, though, in terms of like there are a lot of comedians that I think are funny. You know what I mean? But I never picture them as my influences. I would say that maybe it'd be more print influences. I really liked I would say one of my favorite comics growing up, for example, was Bloom County, which is the one it's got a penguin in it named Opus. It was called Bloom County. It was called Outland for a while. If you're not familiar, it's really great, and it ran for a lot of the 80s into the 90s. I think they may still have one or two out now that will occasionally come out. It sort of ran concurrently and started around where Doonesbury did.
Okay.
And I think that maybe it's the better thing, even though Doonesbury still limps along to this day. But I don't know, something like that with just sort of mix of, I don't really know what it is. It's just a sensibility of like a goofy sensibility, but also like I don't know.
That's exactly what Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Kind of like influence you is like a person, like not specific influences, but you're just like, that was always something that.
That's always something I really liked. Yeah, to be fair for that. And then like in terms of like other things that I like things I would like, I really am passionate about. I really enjoy the writing end of things. I really like things like comedy things, and I like horror things, and I like writing both. And I think that they're similar in interesting ways, and that's like what I like.
Oh, you like to write?
I do, yeah. That I wrote something that I hope to God they could put up at like a sort of show at UCB or something. It's like a spank, what they call.
Okay.
I mean, this is not a I just wrote something. I'm in
so
the
what's a
process
spank? Is it like a live reading of what you've written?
A spank is something where there's a night where it's like a half hour, and it's 2 shows they put up, and basically you have to apply to get it put up, and if it gets put up and people like it, then it can get in some way potentially like an indefinite run at the theater. For example, like the scenes from an Italian restaurant like show that like Drew Johnston and Don Spinelli have done, that is a spank. That started as a spank, right? And now that just sort of runs like maybe twice a month at the theater. But it's just sort of something that you come up with, and then you do it once, and then they will either pick it up or not. Mm-hmm. So I like that. And I also think it would be great to write some sort of adventure novels. I would let you see it for sure.
Wait, did you read Goosebumps growing up?
Oh yeah, I read all of those. I mean, I think I read all of them.
That's incredible.
I really like them a lot.
We're actually rereading them and reviewing them right on our pod, just as a trip down memory lane.
You are? What are you? I reread when I was older, and it's interesting also to see all of the. It's interesting to see all the new covers they come out with.
Yeah.
And the other thing that is worth knowing is that a guy named Matt, who is not, he came a lot when the show was in Harlem for like 20 episodes. He was an editor at Scholastic, and he was mostly in charge of like the reissues of all those.
Whoa.
Actually, at Scholastic, which is a real interesting thing to talk to him about.
Yeah, because they have reprints that were just like every so often they put reprints out with the same material inside. It's just like different covers and stuff. I have the original 62 covers, and we were kind of talking about that too last week, in the sense that I don't know if you know, but there's going to be a Goosebumps film, and Jack Black is going to play R.L. Stein.
I did not know that. That's pretty great, actually.
That's ridiculous.
It's 2016, I guess it hits theaters, but now that was one of our ideas. We wanted to review every couple. We're only up to 3. Jake is about to read Monster Blood, which is number 3. And so we want to read the entire 62, the original 62 run. So that's been like one of our bits of the ongoing show. And I also wanted to throw you some show ideas that we have. And so you could either say they're bad, good, or you could just elaborate on one, or we could just skip it.
Make up your own.
Or just make up your own.
Right. I would be curious, just to like bookmark this, I'm curious as you're rereading them to know which ones you think like sort of hold up the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like now.
Well, right off the bat, you said stay out of the basement.
I'm also not the other thing, I'm not a super, critical person. I'm not like, there are things that I really love, and there are some things I really don't like at all. But most things I'm like I can find something to like about them. So I'm not going to be like tearing any of these ideas apart here, just so you know.
But, we are going to see which ones still hold up, because I thought Stay Out of the Basement, number 2, did.
Right.
Number 1, Welcome to Dead House, you kind of knew where it was going. There was too many context clues, because the context clues, I guess, were there for, obviously the younger reader. But it's just like, I don't need all these context clues. Like, you could just say what's going on, and I'll pick it up. But it was like, everything was just like, I got it. But 2 was good. Jake wanted to read Monster Blood.
Those are my favorites.
So
I also remember there was, I remember Monster Blood 2 didn't have the hamster on the cover, or is that something?
Yes, his hamster grew to enormous proportions.
Mm-hmm. And the first one's just like a pair of like broken glasses and like a big thing of gack or something.
That's the Monster Blood.
Yeah, that's
gack.
Yeah, the one with the hamster where it's like too big for the cage and it's just like busting out.
I think the hamster is just like busting through the cage because someone put Monster Blood in there. It's just.
Yeah, from what I remember of Monster Blood, it just makes things bigger. Is the only thing I remember about Monster Blood.
That's all it is.
The only one I really remember rereading was Phantom of the Auditorium. I think I reread that. Like,
I don't think I've ever read that one.
That's like kind of one near the first third, or I think in like the first third, or in the like first 30.
Okay.
And I just remember I'd read Phantom of the Opera in middle school, and I was like, I'm going to see what this is like comparatively, and it was just sort of, I don't remember any of it that well, but I did reread that at some point, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I know that you do, because you do, you had a few at least, you had those book reviews on YouTube as well, so you review books as well.
Well, that was just a sort of a lark. I've never been able to come up with an idea that I think would be as good as that, so I haven't.
Isn't the Richard Scary one?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But some ideas that we have had, either that we've thought up or somebody like friends of ours have thought up and said, you guys should do this. And these most of these are half cooked. But we wanted to interview, and this is like one that I really am excited about, interview someone that has worked on an airplane before.
Okay.
And we just want to know like the insides and outs of like things you don't know that go on airplanes. And that was something, for whatever reason, I thought of, and I'm just like, that's going to be a home run.
I think that's also good because it's not like it's one particular person you need to get for that. It's not like, oh, we need to get this person. You could just get anybody, who works on an airplane. So it's like you have a wide net to cast for that. It's not like, oh, we have to get, like, I don't know, why was Martin Lawrence the first person that I thought of? It's like, well, no, we can just get someone who worked on an airplane. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be baggage. It could be from the pilot to like just people throwing the luggage in the lower compartment of the plane. So I thought that was interesting. Different types of grass is another one that came up, just discussing different types of grass, whether it be crabgrass, traditional grass. See, I'm not educated in grass.
Most of it's green.
Most of it's green. We also wanted to read.
How would you do that? I don't know, like, what? How would you keep that? How would you keep the momentum with the grass?
We probably wouldn't.
We wouldn't. We would fail to keep that momentum. We would fail to keep that momentum. That's the problem, to actually have somebody sit down and listen to 40 to 50 minutes of us talking about grass.
And more or less things that we don't know about, which so far has been every episode.
Yeah.
So far. One that I had was a parody of other podcasts. So for one episode, we style our podcast around how other successful podcasts conduct their
because we're not a successful podcast, so we want to maybe mimic the ideas of other podcasts.
Hey, everyone's got to start at some point. Every podcast has the first episode, so
yeah, we did our pilot episode, and I thought I came off in the pilot episode as like really like mundane and boring, and so I had to fix it for our second episode.
Todd actually changed who he was as a person.
I changed who I was over a week's time for people to like me more.
It's hard. Doing radio is really hard because you realize that especially for people who have like the longer shows like a Howard Stern or even like the political ones, it's hard to just keep going and convey so much with only your voice for an hour or however long it is. It's very difficult to do without coming off like in a way that you might find irritating, because people just have to listen to you. You can't like buy in with any of your expressions or your mannerisms,
Yeah, so we're gonna like how NPR has those like pregnant pauses and like weird instrumental breaks in their podcast. So we were gonna try to do that. Another one I think that you would like, and maybe you even have some to add to the list. Weird towns across the United States, and we're gonna like if people email in towns, which our email address is thatyourkid@yahoo.com. Email us weird town names, and we're gonna look them up and talk about them. And on a scale of 1 to 5 haunts, we're going to put a ratio there to see how haunted we think that town is.
That's right.
So I don't know if you know any like weird towns around New York or like weird towns in general, but we want to talk about weird and or haunted towns.
Gethard would obviously be a great person to talk to about that. Because
Weird New Jersey, yeah.
Right, and all that, like that. He wrote the Weird New York book too. There. Have you guys ever seen that?
No. And we were just with him the other day. I guess I could have Because when he came down to Pittsburgh, we had like dinner and stuff like that. I guess that would have been a great person to bring that up to. I guess there's still time though.
Oh yeah, I mean, weird towns. I thought you were just talking about weird town names. You're talking about towns that are actually weird.
I found one just at random, and I typed in Ellison Bay.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be a town. Was it in Wisconsin?
Yeah, Wisconsin.
And we found out just through a little bit of like Wikipedia research, it actually part of the town had blown up, had exploded. So I'm not sure, but that one was pretty spooky. That was a pretty spooky town, just the very first one.
A good idea that we've been trying to put together for weeks that I think that you'd find interesting is we want to read scripts, like unpublished scripts. We want to download one and pass out a script to all our friends and just have a table set up with maybe like 4 or 5 people, and we each assign them a character, and they just read scripts verbatim. And we've never really fully taken a look at the script. It's just like, here, read this, you're this, and see where it goes.
Right.
And we hope to have that soon.
Especially if they were sort of more like a genre thing, you know, like because that way you ensure that whoever was going for it with the writing script is at least doing something that would be interesting to read out loud. Like unpublished horror or like, I don't know. I lean towards that stuff anyway.
That was some of the ideas that we have in the future. Again, we're like a 2-person podcast. We're right outside of Pittsburgh. We're just kind of starting out doing our own thing. And with you being our first guest, it was definitely awesome. And if you'd like to come back later on, like when we were talking about Goosebumps, maybe that we'll get in contact with you about when Phantom of the Auditorium comes up. Maybe we could get in contact with you and have you back on for the pod you could review that one.
Oh, so I could basically reread it again, because I would be like the worst scholar to have about Phantom of the Auditorium right now. Having read it twice, I don't really know.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like down the road, because we have to read all these again. We don't remember anything, so we're rereading the whole thing. So you could be a part of that down the road too. But yeah.
I was going to say one more thing. Did you guys ever read Ghosts of Fear Street books?
No, we haven't. Fear Street's coming back, though, I hear.
Ghosts of Fear Street are? Those books. Let me explain.
Yeah.
Fear Street was like for more like teens, like more slightly adult leaning. Then they had the Goosebumps. I think Ghosts of Fear Street, to me, like as someone who has read maybe one Fear Street book, sort of were like the bridge between them in terms of like how rough the content, you know, put that obviously in big scare quotes, of how rough the content is and how scary it is. They were like a little, they were like more, I don't know, they were
visceral. I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe a little more, sure, maybe a little more intense in some manner. But again, I haven't read in a long time. But I remember being into those too. I don't know if Arlstein wrote all of them. So.
Yeah, they're supposed to be the Fear Street title. It's supposed to be returning in 2014 fall. So I guess it's going to be this year, but R.L. Stein's going to be writing those, so I'm not sure. They already announced the first one's going to be called Party Games, so I don't know what that would be.
What are they doing at the party? It's going to be a great, deadly time.
I guess but the difference between Fear Street and Goosebumps is, if I remember correctly, people die in Fear Street, right?
There is more murder. I do remember, didn't someone die in Welcome to Dead House?
No, there was someone dead in it. They were dead. They were talking to ghosts, but they themselves did not die on page, at least, if you know what I mean. It wasn't written. They came into the process already dead.
Was there some part where someone got their head cut off?
Well, the
ghost?
The guy from Stay Out of the Basement got cut in half, didn't he?
Stay Out of the Basement, the monster dad, not the real dad. The monster dad got cut in half, and then there was just like green gook and muck coming out of his torso, but
just tendrils everywhere.
So there were tendrils, vines, tomato plants. It was like pretty nuts, but I don't know. At least in the first two novels there, 1 and 2 we read so far, nobody has died. And if I can remember, I don't know if anyone does die in Goosebumps, but I think there's more murder stuff in Fear Street.
Oh, there is definitely more murder and like vaguely risque situations probably in Fear Street than ever in Goosebumps. I read one. I think it was like a Christmas sort of one, and I don't remember it. That is
this is all hearsay about this, but
Okay.
I will say that when Arl Stein was on Gethard, that was probably one of the most like starstruck I was by.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, with him being on that, like I thought that with R.L. Stein being on the Gethard show, I really thought that like he would, that part of R.L. Stein was a character, but he really stayed like in that, like he didn't do anything that you wouldn't think R.L. Stein wouldn't do. Like he was just R.L. Stein 100% of the time.
He had a really good time. When he got there, he was just sort of trying to. I think he was trying to figure out who won the Red Sox game that had just happened, and I think won. I don't remember, but he was like, he's a really big baseball person. That's what he had been just doing before that. So he had a good time on the show. It was interesting to meet him.
Okay, well, I'm glad you took some time out of your Sunday to talk with us, and but we would definitely like to have you on again and talk about Goosebump books, and maybe the next time we'll have like Skype calls working, so it'd be a little bit more professional. But this was Andrew Hot Dog Parrish. You could see him returning to MNN with the Chris Gethard Show, which is what, I think the 2nd that it starts, right?
April, you know it exactly. April 2nd.
April 2nd, yeah. So that, and you can check out, for those of you who do not watch the Chris Gethard Show, you can check out the chrisgethardshow.com. But thank you, Andrew, for coming on. I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks again, man.
Hey, thanks. Great. Good to see you guys. Talk to you guys again. Not see you. Talk to you soon.
Next time we'll see you.
All right. That sounds good.
All right. Take care, buddy.
All right. You too. Have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right.
All right. So that was Hot Dog, and we love Hot Dog. Big Hot Dog supporters here. And what did you get from the conversation with Hot Dog?
What did I get from him? He's pretty much just what he seems like he would be. A pretty nice guy, obviously. Yeah. Very entertaining.
The tooth?
The Golden Books thing.
I mean,
that was it. I think that was the crux of anything we could have done. Him telling us that his dad would very lightly love tap his teeth out with a golden book. Obviously, I hope you had the same imagery as I did when he was saying these things. But just that love tap, that tooth tap was great.
And hopefully we get him back on the podcast.
I think he will. He will.
Phantom of the Auditorium. I think we could get him.
I think he's burnt out on Phantom of the Auditorium. I don't think he's going to reread that. He made that very clear. He's like, it'd probably be the worst. I would be the worst one to reread that. So that's
like 24 or 25. It's somewhere up there. So he has some time.
Maybe we'll just ask him for his opinion on it based on his recollection. What do you remember from?
Because he does Richard Scarry book reviews there.
We should like repost that or somehow. That's great.
But speaking of the person I mentioned that I didn't care about, I actually care about them a lot because
so
they had
redacting that statement.
I redacted the statement completely because this is not the one of the Daves, because we have 2 Daves that listen. This is Dave 1 from
week 2,
and he had wrote in to isthatyourkid@yahoo.com, which you can do, by the way, as well.
You know what? He might not have even made it this far after you offended him like that.
Well, we'll see. Well, I hope
so.
But he wrote in and it says...
I hope he's still here. I hope he's still here.
But I don't know if you know this, Jake, but that has a lot to do with this.
So ghost stuff, then.
Ghost stuff. So is that your ghost segment this week? He writes in and he says, this is a 16 out of 19.78 on the haunted scale.
Whoa.
Dave. And he had linked us to Centralia, Pennsylvania. So Centralia, Pennsylvania is a borough and a near ghost town in Columbia County, Pennsylvania. And you know what? I'll be real about this. I feel like I've heard about this place before.
Centralia?
Centralia, yes. CEN.
There was a mine fire there, I think.
There was a mine fire there? Do you know that?
Do mines burn?
Oh, we're about to find out. So we're going to check it out on Wikipedia right now. We're just early history. Yes, bro. I think you're right. I already see something under history. Mining.
That's the one that's still... Is it the one that's like... that burned for just an incredible amount of time?
I think you might be onto something.
Let's read it.
Yeah, you want to read Mine Fire? I'll let you. I don't want to take
Are
your
you on
steam
the-
away. No pun intended.
Okay, I hope. Yeah. So it had 1,000 residents in 81 to 10 residents in 2010.
Wow.
It's Columbia County, Pennsylvania. As a result of the mine fire burning beneath the borough since 1962,
Mm-hmm.
it's the least populated municipality in Pennsylvania. Wow. Okay. All properties in the borough were claimed under eminent domain by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in 92. So basically everything's condemned and no one's allowed to live in it. Even if you wanted. Wow, this is crazy. I remember this the more we read. Mine fire. 62, a fire started in a mine beneath the town and ultimately led to the town being entirely abandoned. It was a ghost fire. No one really knows what triggered the fire. I'm just skimming here.
Mm-hmm.
5 members of the volunteer fire department volunteered to clean up the landfill. I'm skimming again.
You see these pictures?
The
Look
landfill
at
was in a
toxic
different
gas.
location.
Toxic gas and smoke rising from the ground above the underground fire in 2006. Bottom right there. Look at all that toxic smoke.
Ooh, a lot.
So here's the big question. Okay, here's the big question. With the mine fire, we're looking at the historical population. In 1870, we were about 1342. The biggest it got there was in the 40s. We were only almost 2,500 people. Today, estimated here again, like Jake said, 10 people. So, in your opinion,
I can't see any deaths because I'm not saying I want this to happen.
but how
people
many
dying,
unseen deaths are there in Centralia?
I don't know. The amount of deaths is a direct relation to how haunted I think that place is.
Mm-hmm.
If no one died in the mine fire and no one died since,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I could give it many haunts. However,
Well, let me read this before you go on with the haunts. Centralia has been used as a model for many different ghost towns and physical manifestations of hell. Prominent examples include David Wellington's Vampire Zero. Centralia was also an inspiration for the video game series, the film adaptation of the video game Silent Hill.
I knew you were gonna say that, and I didn't just read that.
Silent Hill. So I don't know, man. All these
The fact that those are all these abandoned buildings that no one's allowed to live in, and you're walking through, maybe not even allowed to walk through, would be pretty
very
terrifying.
few homes still stand today.
Okay.
And most of it said prior to demolition, the last remaining house on Locust Avenue was notable for the 5 chimney support buttresses along each of the 2 opposite sides of the house.
Kind of made it look like a spooky castle.
Yeah. Oh, another house with similar buttresses was visible from the northern side of the cemetery.
I want my house to have buttresses.
Cemetery, bro. You know what's in cemeteries? Ghosts. Okay.
Okay.
Buttresses. So, okay. We're talking weird buttresses, cemeteries.
10 people living there.
10 people living there. So population decrease.
What would it take to be the last person living there? For all of your neighbors to leave in 40-year time and be like, well, I'll stay. I'll stay.
I'll say this.
Someone's gotta.
I would put that on my, my Tumblr, how everybody has that quirky one line about them, like, I'm this person. I would put, I'm the only person living in Centralia, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And then, obviously a very hot smoking shot of myself just getting out of the shower, just with a towel on, just looking as muscular as, the bod would look, as you could assume. For those who've not met me, I am jacked. Anyway.
Enormous.
The
bod. We should put this on the Tumblr.
Yeah,
visual stuff. I'm showing Todd a picture. It's a warning sign from Centralia. We should put that up.
Yeah, I'll put that up. And
so, do we have enough? Do we have enough to?
So on haunts, what do you think?
Out of how many?
What was your haunt scale? 5? I don't know.
Dave's haunt scale was off the charts. It was like 19.
Mm-hmm.
He did 16 out of 19.
Yeah, something like that.
Out of 5?
Yeah, out of 5 haunts.
It's more than 3. It's 3 or more.
Oh, it's more than Ellison Bay? Or Ellison, is that what it was? Ellison Bay?
Yeah, easily. You know what?
You gave 3.
If I was there, if I was standing in it right now, saying I'd give it a 5 out of 5 easily, but I'm not there. But right now, I'd say 4.
4 out of 5. Centralia, Pennsylvania. Thank you for the email, Dave. And as I mentioned, we're welcome emails in. Is that your kid at yahoo.com. Also, something I briefly touched upon last week that I do want to go out on this week. We're looking for musicians or bands or projects to be featured on our show.
Right.
So if you have a 2.5 minute song you'd like to debut or just have on the show from your band, we'd be happy. If you wrote us a little write-up, we'd be happy to talk about it.
In fact, we'd probably play your band right now.
Right now. Your band would start now. So I know I've been in serious talks with a buddy of mine about him sending his music in, and we'll find out more about that. But you could also hit us up on isthatyourkid.tumblr.com, at isthatyourkid on Twitter, and isthatyourkid.podomatic.com, which you may find us here. And also, as I mentioned last week, we are now on Stitcher. So if you use Stitcher, let us know. In fact, isthatyourkid@yahoo.com. Just let us know how you listen to the podcast, just so it gives us a better gauge of whether you listen to it on iTunes, if you subscribed on iTunes, Podomatic, Stitcher, what have you, just so we get a general idea of where you are and how we could better suit your needs. But that's about it. So Jake, I'll let you send it off. Oh, before I do that,
special thanks. Andrew Parrish. Is that what you were going for?
Yes, that's what I was going for. Special thanks again to...
That could have been my out.
Yeah.
You could have just passed it. I was ready for it.
But next week as well, okay, I'll skip it then. I'll skip it and go right to this as if I wasn't going to originally say this, but I'll say this now. Next week we have an update on the scavenger hunt, and ooh. I honestly don't know what Jake has, but he has informed me that he has 3 things.
I'm feeling confident.
So we're going to update you on our scavenger hunt next week and go from there. Jake, go ahead. You can give your special thanks to Hot Dog. Are you throwing something at me?
Yeah, I'm just pass it. Just pass it back and forth as we do this ending. All right, special thanks to Chris Gethard for just being cool. Real nice guy. First time ever meeting Chris Gethard. Shout out to him. Awesome guy. Great stand-up. I really enjoyed it. And thanks to Andrew Hot Dog Parrish for just coming in and talking with us today. Very cool. Well,
and thanks for whatever this is.
From the guys in the Is That Your Kid studios, we would just say thanks.
All right. See you next week, everybody.
Later.
My dad would always help me knock out my baby teeth with, do you guys know those golden books?